So Alyssa, what's on your radar?
Across the country, the Delta variant of COVID-19 is spreading following a month of vaccinations lagging nationally. COVID hospitalizations nearly tripled in the last month, but the good news is that according to data compiled by the Kaiser Family Foundation, the rates of death among fully vaccinated people with COVID-19 is effectively 0% in all but 2 reporting states. I say this not to create alarmism or to scare you, we have enough of that, but to paint the picture that we have an urgent problem, and like most things, it's the politicians' fault. 50% of the U.S. population is fully vaccinated, but tens of millions of Americans remain skeptical of the vaccine. The question is why? Look no further than Washington, D.C. At a time when vaccine-skeptical Americans need to be persuaded by data and science rather than politics and lecturing, President Biden has unfortunately chosen to do the latter. Biden recently said that his patience with the unvaccinated is running thin and suggested they are not nearly as smart as he thought they were for choosing not to. Washington Post columnist and Bush alumni Mark Thiessen eloquently writes, "No one has ever been insulted into changing their mind. In fact, it often has the reverse effect." Now, this problem is not right or left. Vaccine skeptics exist on both sides of the aisle. But the notion that the push to get vaccinated is motivated by politics and not public health is almost certainly hurting the effort to get shots in arms. This past week, President Biden took to attacking Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida for rising COVID cases in his state, suggesting it's his fault. Now, let's make a few things clear. 49.5% of Floridians are fully vaccinated, while nationally, the U.S. just reached 50% nationally who have been fully vaccinated. So Florida is roughly 0.5% behind the national average, all while being one of the largest and most diverse states in the union. I'd hardly call that failure. Further, Governor Ron DeSantis has encouraged Floridians time and time again to get vaccinated, telling them it could save their lives, not telling them that they aren't smart. But further, I'm a Federalist. I believe in leadership by the states. But the notion that Governor DeSantis is solely responsible for vaccination rates in Florida and not the Commander-in-Chief Joe Biden is absurd. Now, some of the left's criticism of DeSantis has been his unwillingness to shut down the economy again or enforce mask mandates. Well, I'd note that he's not the only governor doing so. Joe Biden's home state of Delaware, which has a high vaccine rate but rising case positivity rate, isn't locked down, nor does it have a mask mandate. Now, Florida is a red state. In fact, it's a growing Republican stronghold. No doubt a more significant number of vaccine skeptics in Florida are Republicans. Let me ask you, do you think it helps convince them that getting the vaccine is purely about public health and not about politics when the President of the United States keeps singling out Floridians and their highly popular Republican governor? Of course not. I worked on public health messaging for the U.S. government since before the first case arrived on U.S. shores, first at the Department of Defense and later at the White House. I know it's hard, and I'm deeply sympathetic to the challenges the current White House faces. But here's an idea. Rather than attacking DeSantis, who methinks the White House is afraid of running against in 2024, what about reaching out to Republican governors' offices and doing joint PSAs to show the public this isn't about politics. We can disagree on many things, but we don't disagree on this. This vaccine is safe and could save your life. After all, aren't we all in this together?
Well, definitely demonizing people. You're absolutely right, Alyssa, that demonizing people is not the way to get them to suddenly say, oh, well, since you are calling me names and insulting me and telling me I'm not very smart, then you're right. I guess I need to go and do this. That is certainly not a working strategy, that is for sure.
Since everything is so partisan in this country, I wish that we could go back in time and say that somehow code the different vaccines as blue and red. Like if you are a Democrat, then you're taking the Pfizer vaccine. If you're a Republican, you're going to own the libs by only doing the Johnson & Johnson one. But it does seem that we're so stuck in this place that people's identity is linked to their decision here. And I think you're absolutely right that trying to shame somebody into it is just simply not going to work. But I do still think there's a lot of room at the margins where you could do some work. And I think if Biden would insist, and if Congress would insist that if you get the vaccine, you get 48 hours off of work, that could lead to a pretty significant uptake, because polls are showing, and also intuition shows, that there are a decent number of people out there who are reluctant to take the vaccine because the cost of potentially losing their job because they can't show up because they now have 102-degree fever, or they've heard about the difficulties that some of their friends have had in the day or two after. They say, you know what, I'm just going to take my chances and not bother. But if they could get 2 days off, you're like, hey.
I think that's. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, I want to point out that there was actually a study that was recently just published it was conducted by Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh, and they actually found that one of the most hesitant groups are actually highly educated people who have PhDs, and there's a lot of medical people that also have been extremely hesitant. So they actually found, their findings were pretty interesting, that, when Joe Biden says, well, you're not very smart, they're actually saying, the most vaccine hesitant, the ones that aren't willing to budge, are the ones who are highly educated. They found that people with high school educations or less were the ones most likely to be influenced by, $100 gift card or free Krispy Kremes or a couple days off from work. But trying to get that other group to, this highly educated group to actually go for it is going to take a lot more than just some basic incentives.
Well, two quick things. I think that's a great point, Kim. And I do think that there would be a lot of wisdom in going back to sort of regular public health briefings. Have the Surgeon General go out, have the FDA Commissioner go out and talk through the science, the health potential consequences, anything that you may be at risk of if you get vaccinated, to answer those questions. Because there are legitimate questions that you can have experts talk through that may work with that group of Americans. But to Ryan's point, which I think is an excellent one, we from the outset, we being the U.S. government, so my former capacity, struggled to get marginalized communities access both to testing and to the vaccination. And I do think that folks who are, struggling to make ends meet, or they have to work, they can't miss a day and miss a paycheck, having that 2 days actually mandated off would be a major incentive. I'm not huge on the hand out dollars for, shots, but I do think that's a very valid concern for working Americans and something that Congress should consider.
And I also actually think it was a really bad idea at the very outset of this, the way that you saw a lot of some states and some elites started arguing what we need to do is get this vaccine out to people of color first, and it created this. And they thought they were doing something good. They thought they were being woke and they were being compassionate and saying, marginalized communities are more likely to be frontline workers, more likely to be susceptible. Therefore, they ought to be at the front of the line. But people who have been living in this country and for understand that the United States government doesn't ever do anything for the benefit of marginalized communities. And so they heard that and they're like, oh, so you want us to be guinea pigs for this? You want us to take this first, so that you can find out whether it's safe, and then you can, because nobody's assuming good intentions on the part of the United States government or these elites, and so I think that kind of set it up to fail a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, well-intentioned,
and big pharma
but
also.
not.
People don't really trust big pharma, so
yeah, well-intentioned but bad policy and practice. Now, Team Rising joins us next.